Racism is when one believes that they possess traits and behaviors that make them superior to other human beings. This can lead to prejudice, discrimination, and antagonism against another. You would think this is different in the sporting fields, as sport is known to unite all. There's been instances of players who've been discriminated against just because of the color of their skin. Some have been excluded, booed off the field, and even suffered from mental breakdowns. Welcome to Ask Dudu. I'm Dudu Ntlabati-Madonsela, a relationship and life coach. Wandile, you know, when we speak about racism in sport, most of the time you hear about these stories in the rugby, fraternity, and athletics. How come then in the soccer spheres, this is not often spoken about?
I feel like in the soccer fraternities, there's a lot of money invested in trying to build a rainbow nation and making it seem like there's much more stronger unity behind the front lines, and it's not actually the case. Mm-hmm. I feel like the people who run it usually get the message that there's a lot of racism, especially in the smaller clubs in development, but they do absolutely nothing about it.
Because there's so many structures in soccer, right? You have the national federations, then you have provincial, and you have smaller locals. Are you saying that this racism filters across, or are you finding it maybe it's centralized at a club level or, you know, the lower divisional level and no one is doing anything about it?
I feel like it filters all the way from the top to the bottom. Mm-hmm. I feel like at grassroots level, that's where it actually is happening the most, because I feel like there's not enough structures for us to actually deal with it and address it, because we have governing bodies that actually want us to speak out. But once you speak out, there's not enough protection given to you once you do. So
when you say this racism, because I mean, in sport, I'm trying to figure.
Yes.
Are you saying that certain groups are discriminated, hence they can't reach their full potential? What do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean by racism?
100%. Minority groups are always looked and frowned down upon, especially the ones who don't have money or the resources to actually reach the full potential. People who might be in the upper class will always be looked better at, rather than people who don't have the right infrastructure and right resources to actually reach their full potential.
Okay. I'd like to have more of this conversation in studio. So can we just go to studio and we'll discuss this further. Today in studio we have Wandile, who's a soccer coach and who's going to talk about the racism that he's experienced in his career and what can be done about it. Welcome, Wandile. Wandile, you're in soccer, right? So what exactly do you do?
I'm a sports coach and a soccer referee.
Okay, and how has your experience been in terms of, like, I mean, you say there's a whole lot of racism there, but how has your experience been in terms of building a career there?
It's been stop-starts, honestly speaking, because every time I feel like I'm actually making progress, I have to deal with certain racist things happening to me, and they're very demoralizing, and they push you down.
So, you know, when someone is not in sport, for example, I mean, like, I'm not in sport, but the only form of racism I can think of in sport is when people are booed off the field.
Yes.
But when you speak about, you know, how the infrastructure is set up and also your experience as a coach, what is this racism from your experience that you speak of from the angle of your profession?
As a coach, also you get booed. You get booed by opposition supporters, opposition players.
But why do you think that's racism?
I think it's racism because we're all here to do the same thing and to play and to win, obviously. So why are you booing me for doing the same thing that you're here to do as well?
Are you saying that you find that the booing is ultimately you're undermined because of the color of your skin?
Yes, definitely, because they don't boo the other coaches. For example, if there was a white coach sitting in the dugout or the technical area, you wouldn't get booed if you were a white coach. But as a black coach, you get undermined a lot. They'll ask you, for example, do you have the right to be here? Do you have the qualifications? What experience do you have?
And how does that inhibit you moving up then?
It makes you not want to actually continue going further, getting to a professional level. Because you're thinking, if it's at the level that I'm at, how much more is it at the upper levels? Like, if it's so much at the level that I am, should I continue doing this and dealing with more racism and racist abuse from people, or should I just stay where I'm at and handle the racism that's here?
So do you feel like the structures that are in place, and in some instances it's been evident with the cases like the cricket board, but do you think that the structures in place are completely aware of what is going on? And if they are, do you think they're ignoring it? Or the matter is so complex that it doesn't take one institution just to fix?
I think they are aware of it. It's just that they don't do enough to deal with it.
And what would this be enough be?
They don't actually investigate and actually find out where you're actually coming from. There are places where you can actually report it and actually file a complaint, but they don't actually do enough to actually investigate. They'll send you an email or call you and ask you to come in and write a letter or send an email and describe what actually happened. But then after that, nothing much gets done. You'll just be left hanging, and then next week you deal with the same thing, or probably deal with inside the club or another club.
So, and how does this impact talent, especially like from a grassroots level? How, in your opinion, has this racism observation of yours impacted the level and the quality of talent that we're exposed to?
With today's kids, they're quick to know where they stand in society, and they're quick to notice that certain people from different races don't actually feel comfortable around them. So it hinders their development. Because if you see a child from a well-off background being treated differently, for example, if I have to play a white boy every week and I get told that you can't play a certain non-white boy, he'll see that and he'll ask me, Coach, why am I not playing? And then as a coach, you don't have the answer to give him, because you also don't want to hinder his talents and stop him from playing. But deep down inside, you know that my hands are tied. I can't play you because of politics off the field.
And a classic example of such in South Africa is when we look at, for example, the selection of coaches, club coaches and national coaches. And one could argue that, for example, it seems like we're more likely to export white talent in terms of coaches than look at the selection of black coaches that we have. And we also have Pitso, which in some people's opinion, he was undermined when he was a coach here, and he's doing extremely well. He's in Egypt, right?
Yes, he is.
He is, yeah. And he seems to be doing well in the country and the club that he's coaching. Do you think that statement is fair if somebody says that's how it's especially playing out in the PSL and the national soccer level?
Yes, 100% true. I mean, if you look at the recent appointment of the national team coach, it's a foreign coach. I feel like there were more suitable local candidates that the job could have gone to. And I find it strange that every single time we look at foreign coaches more and give them an opportunity, and then we'll have the fans complaining about him not understanding our culture or our style of play. And coming back to club level is just the same. I mean, if you had to look at how many foreign coaches were at the so-called big clubs, they are more likely to hire foreign coaches than give local talent, local coaches.
And my understanding is even when they do get a local coach, you can't compare the salary. There's a big observable gap between the two.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not sure if it's because of the licensing being from Europe and licensing being from Africa, but...
And do you think that gives a narrative that they don't trust African talent, and especially Black talent? Why is there this reservation to first look within the continent and within the country? Because even so, it's not very often that you hear of a coach who comes from another African country.
Yeah, I feel like there's no trust amongst the soccer fraternity for local coaches. And I ask myself then, why are we even in this industry if we're not going to be given an equal opportunity?
And if majority of players are
South African and they're Black.
Who holds the money? Is it... because there must be a decision maker who's influencing this. And do you think that the decision makers are the different color skin, and hence that's why it seems like they don't have Black coaches and players' interest in mind?
Yeah, I think that also plays a huge role, because as a local coach, it will be harder for you to go to Europe and get into their leagues. But for them to come into our leagues, it's much more easier. And whoever's in charge of SAFA, at times, I feel like what they're trying to achieve and what they're trying to do at grassroots level, it's not the same. There's a huge disconnect.
And, speaking of money, I know that sponsorship is very big in sport. And, I guess as the soccer fraternity and even as clubs, there's a lot of stakeholders that you need to keep happy. And one of the things that comes to mind is the kneeling against racism, where in other sporting disciplines, I can think of, like, for example, the Formula One, where Max Verstappen refused to kneel. But it seems like in soccer, a lot of players had to conform, which takes away the essence of the movement, because there's a lot of reported racism in soccer, but it's not coming out in the open simply because people are conforming to a certain narrative. And that narrative is probably set by corporate sponsors to say, this is what we would like you to appear. It's almost like sweeping matters under the carpet.
Yeah, definitely. It gets swept under the carpet a lot. It does happen, but obviously players are told to brush it aside, or it's a once-off thing, or it won't happen again, because few of them will actually come out and actually discuss what actually happens behind the scenes, behind closed doors, or what they actually experience. Because of media training, as you mentioned, they get sponsored. Some players even have...
Maybe somebody doesn't understand what media training is. So are you saying that they go to like an etiquette school for speaking right in public?
There's certain things you can't say. They'll teach you how to speak to the media, how to answer questions, how to not answer questions. They'll teach you...
And you think that filters certain conversations, and hence people are not free to express themselves?
Yeah, it filters them down. You have certain players who have sponsorships, or they have companies that actually run their social media, so they can't really come out and say what they feel, but it's someone else behind their thoughts. So they don't come out and truly express what they're feeling, because they're afraid of losing their sponsorship or having their contract terminated. So it happens a lot, but no one is willing to talk about it.
I actually wanted to touch on that, to say, the typical probably African and probably South American child, when they play soccer, they really, really, really come from, it's like their way out of poverty.
Yeah.
So hence, do you think this is the reason why a lot of them are not speaking out? Because they've got so much to lose.
Yeah.
And if I spoke out, it's almost like I don't have anything else to revert to. This was my one chance, and I don't want to blow it, but just lifting the lid on things that I'd rather keep unsaid.
100%, because you probably spend your whole life playing football. That's all you know. You're probably a breadwinner. The last thing you'd want is to put your family in a situation where now they don't have anything just because you wanted to actually express yourself and actually talk about what you were actually feeling, right? So they have a lot to lose. So they'd rather not risk telling the truth and keeping it to themselves than having themselves lose everything over something that they could have easily kept quiet about.
There's a need for change.
Yes.
For athletes, management in the sporting fraternity. What are some of the things that you recommend could work in order for us to see a better future?
Proper investment at all levels, grassroots, in the township, in urban areas, proper investment. Like the investment should be equal, not focus in one area specifically, and proper education on all levels. And what I mean by that, at school level, at the club, anywhere, we need to be educated better about everything that's going on, especially in such a diverse country. We need to understand where we're coming from to actually get to a different place to where we are right now.
Greater levels of tolerance.
Yeah, definitely.
And then from a management perspective, what do you think can be done better in that instance?
From a management perspective, I think the same. They need to actually understand us as coaches and players as well, because I feel like they have a set structure that they expect all of us to follow and to understand. And I feel like some of those structures are a bit outdated.
And rigid.
We need to change. We are people. Everything evolves. Even the structure of some of the things that are done.
And, you know, in the media, there's been reports now and then of a whole lot of either mismanagement of funds or the buying of votes. To what extent do you think there should be better transparency and governance structures in the sporting world?
I think a lot of transparency needs to happen, especially when it comes to organization of any tournament or any league or any sponsorship. We need to know where the money is coming from, where the money is going, and how that money...
We, you meaning the greater public?
Yeah, the greater public.
Okay.
Like, they should be open, because we hear about the money being invested, but when you look at where they actually say the money is going to, it's not really there. When you look at the infrastructure, it's very appalling when you get there.
And limited.
And it's very limited. Some clubs are badly run.
Yeah.
When you go to the grounds, get some grounds, toilets don't work.
And surely, I mean, it's one thing for us to ask the powers that be to say, can you organize yourselves in such a way that you allow for diversity and you're cognizant of how you invest your money and aware of the issues that we have as a nation and how it impacts the kind of talent that you can retain and you can attract. But also there must be things that you think as a player you can do to protect yourself, considering that there are so many things at play. What are the things maybe, especially the up-and-coming players, should be considerate of before they go and sign contracts that could be like they are almost like prison?
I know this will sound rather stupid, but read the contract. Read it 100%. There's so many loopholes and so many things that you don't get told. If you don't understand, get a lawyer or get anyone who understands contracts or the law. Speak to former professional players or anyone who's been at that level and speak to the coaches.
And I mean, this ties it to your literacy to say that because the black player most likely comes from a lower literacy level than some of the white players, not to say that we're not educated, but we're just taking into consideration the dynamics of the country, that some of them don't have the luxury of being able to read such sophisticated and complete and complicated pieces of document. And you're saying that look at other avenues and people to help you to understand exactly what you're going into, because your white counterparts either have parents who are guarding and protecting their interest. And we just need to be cognizant that we need to surround ourselves with people who are protecting our interests.
Because you find a situation where the contract is immediately put on the table, maybe after they've seen you at a couple of practices or training sessions, and they told
you want the money, you need the money.
They'll probably even give you an envelope and say, if you sign immediately, sign on bonus immediately without reading. And then if you can't read, then you'll just sign and find that you're signing away probably a lot of your career. You'll be forced to stay at that club, or the money that you think you're earning, you won't actually earn it because you were so quick to see the money in front of you that you never took the time out.
Wandile, there's this perception that in terms of investing in township clubs, that either there isn't enough investment, or if there is, there's mismanagement of funds. So how can we, as a Black sporting collective, organize ourselves better so that these perceptions go away? Because it seems like one of the things, I mean, you mentioned that it takes a lot for an African child just to show up to a match, right? They have to be cognizant of transport and all sorts of things. And if we had our own establishments, obviously they would design processes in such a way that it accommodates the African child. But that perception of we don't know how to manage funds needs to go away so that we can get in more investment. How do you think we can do better?
I feel like we should get the right people involved. Firstly, we should get the community involved and step away from this perspective that we have that football is only for the underprivileged or it's only for boys in the township. We should get people who actually studied sports management and not just have businessmen or businesswomen invest in them. And going back to the whole transport issue, why don't we have football fields or grounds that are easily accessible to people who live in the townships instead of having them travel all the way to the suburbs, for example, to get to a game? Because it takes more time and transport for them to actually get to the game than actually if it was closer to them to actually have easy access to.
Yeah. And there you have it. Just because you don't see racism or you don't hear about it doesn't mean that it's not embedded in our communities, in our structures, in our systems, in the way we do things. We need to sit back as a collective and reflect and say, how can we do things better? How can we change the way we do things? How can we change our institutions so that they are diverse and inclusive and allow everyone to thrive? Until I see you, I'm Dudu Nhlabati Madonze.